a real change, Prime Minister. Make a real change! Are you going to change the
It was really quite astonishing that. You know, he turned up for a very brief period of time at a very, very grave moment and started getting that kind of abuse from ordinary folk living in Southport. It was almost the day, I think, in many ways, that his problems as Prime Minister began, because what was happening by then already was the internet was going mad. There were all sorts of theories. There was a reluctance, a deep reluctance, a mistaken reluctance on behalf of the government to tell us anything about the perpetrator. But a new theory has emerged today. I'm joined by Dr. Parth Patel, Associate Director for Democracy and Politics at the Institute for Public Policy. And Parth, you're suggesting that a contributory factor to the riots, and you could see just from that clip, it was bubbling already within the community. You're suggesting that one of the reasons is a lack of community spaces and places for people to go.
That's correct.
Surely, so you're saying there weren't enough theme parks to go to, or pubs weren't open, or what are you really saying here?
I'm really talking about places where we can hang out. Something as mundane as that: pubs, parks, cafes, community centres, libraries. These places have slowly disappeared over the past 10 to 15 years, ravaged by austerity, and they really matter. They matter for many things, but one thing that we do know is the more you rub shoulders with people from different backgrounds to the ones you came from, the less likely you are to have resentment against them. And another thing we do know is that common ground in this country is shrinking. It's been shrinking for about the past 10 years, and certainly since last year's riots, I can't see any evidence to the contrary. We do have more resentment.
So you're talking about a form of societal breakdown?
I'm talking about, a sense of polarisation, the increasing belief that for me to win, you have to lose. That's a really toxic premise to build a nation on, and we need to push back against that. And we're talking about why has that happened? And two things happened in the 2010s. One is the introduction of austerity that ravaged these physical places where we can hang out. And the second is the introduction of the smartphone, widely adopted. In 2010, less than half of us had one.
But aren't you missing something? Lockdown. Repeated lockdowns. Actually, if community cohesion breaking down was a contributory factor to what we saw, then I think lockdown must be part of it. Now, you're suggesting, your think tank, that the way we solve this is to put tax on companies that make profits.
Well, yeah, we're introducing quite an imaginative idea.
Raising taxes is not particularly imaginative.
Well, look, the proposal is...
It's a great idea.
Thank you very much.
Oh, well, there you are. There's always one.
There's been a huge shift, Nigel, in how we buy things. There hasn't really been a big shift in how we tax things, right? Gone are the days where we would rock up to an Argos with that heavy tome, that catalogue, you'd flick through those flimsy pages, find the thing you needed to do, punch the numbers in, take it up to this tiny little shop, and that's all of a sudden they just bring out whatever you want. That was an amazing kind of magic trick. No one does that anymore. We just tap it into our phones and we order it online. Yeah, we still tax Argos more than we tax Amazon, because it's a bricks and mortar business.
Yeah,
that needs to catch up. Let's take some more money off the online retailers. They have some responsibility.
There is some truth in that. Now, Ranul, Parth is genuinely charming, but clearly bonkers, do you think?
No, I mean,
surely the anger you could see, even one day on, from what had happened, it's deeper than that, isn't it? Isn't it distrust of government,
Nigel,
distrust of lies?
40% of the people who were arrested... Well, no, this is...
The question was to me.
I know it was, but this whole thing about anger, 40% of the people who were arrested during the riots had got either convictions or had been reported for domestic abuse. And that tells you something about anger.
Of course. But equally, just as with the Epping Hotel last week, most of those people there were genuine members of the community from Essex.
So I think there is a wider problem here, and I do salute Parth's sort of attempt to try and find a way to bring people, which is right. And bringing people together, in my view, has to be about integration of communities. In so many parts of the country, people are kept in silos, and that is not a way that we can possibly run a country with so many different people speaking only their own language, not English, and so on. And I think there's knock-on consequences to that, which is the lack of understanding. But in terms of the idea that this is all going to be solved by creating new youth centres, that's just not right. Actually, what's going to solve this thing is more prosperity in more corners of this country, growing the economy. High streets bring cafes, high streets bring pubs, and if high streets can't succeed because the the economy is not thriving, then that's going to remove those places. And what's happening right now, tax rises on cafes, on pubs, thanks to the NI hike from Rachel Reeves. That's going to
Yeah, I mean, we're actually playing into the online world, aren't we?
Well,
this Labour government is helping the online world.
What do you mean by that, sorry?
Well, I think that the increase in NI,
right,
the rateable business values that have gone back to pre-pandemic levels, effectively, it is retail and hospitality that are really taking the hit.
Yeah. So I think I agree with both of those comments to some extent. Like the deterioration of the high street to me is probably the most vivid symbol of the sense of national malaise that so many of us feel today. My parents run a corner shop. I've seen that high street change over the past 30 years. Shops boarded up,
and
benches
it's not very good.
Why have they removed the benches from the high street? What's that about, right? This is important, but I don't disagree that economics matters, right? Long queues for the NHS, unaffordable housing, low growth, lack of jobs, competition for those things. Those things all do matter for why we feel more in conflict with one each other. But that's the answer everyone always goes to. And what we're trying to point out in this report, in addition to resource scarcity, relationships.
I don't think you're wrong about society being more fractured, about people feeling less together. I don't use it as an excuse for those that went genuinely to riot. One quick, what the Farage moment, I'm going to get all your one-sentence comments on this, that 600,000 graduates are now on benefits. I think, ever since the year 2000, when we announced that 50% of people would go to university, that frankly we have misled hundreds of thousands of young people into thinking that a degree in whatever it was, at whatever level, was the way forward. Joe, it was the Labour Party that started it. This is the result.
Well, they didn't follow up with things alongside of apprenticeships and training for people who weren't going to university. And we've seen the terrible impact that making nursing a degree course has had on the NHS, and you lose the whole tranche
this is
of
about the people going to university.
But it is, and that's the point. And a lot of these people shouldn't have gone.
No, absolutely not. You know, it was a con. It was a great swizz from Tony Blair and his
there was
crew
nothing else offered.
to try and keep people out of unemployment, off the figures, so they could massage the figures. It's not right, and it's even worse now. The Labour Party today are scrapping degree-level apprenticeships, which we brought in to try and counter it. We're seeing some great opportunities for young people, not costing them a penny, earning what they're learning, and that's being scrapped.
I wonder, Parth, whether this actually is part of the anger that we've got in society, that we've told all these kids, go to university, and even when they do get a reasonable job, you know, they're paying 8-9% of it back in terms of repayment on top of taxes. Blimmin' tough, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and I think this statistic is emblematic of a broken economic model. It wasn't so long ago we used to think that as long as a state respects markets and gave it skilled labour in the form of university graduates, growth would take care of itself. You'll earn high wages, be able to get by. That is just no longer true. The number of people going to university in this country is rocketed.
Well, I think wages
have been pretty flat.
Well, you and I will agree it is a broken economic model. We may disagree on how to solve it. Thank you for coming in. Thank you to my panel.